Hello and welcome to Sp'2311 State Politics. My name is Dr. Michelle DeMary, and for the next 7 weeks I'll be guiding you through the material that will help you, I hope, develop a deeper both understanding and appreciation for state politics in the United States. As you know, this is an asynchronous class and it is an online class, so we won't have a whole lot of chance for personal interaction, although I have asked each of you during the first week if you have a chance to sign up for a Zoom session to meet with me in person. It's been my experience that once you've met somebody face-to-face, or at least virtually face-to-face, it's a little easier to make connections should you have questions later on down the road, and I think that's particularly important in an online asynchronous class. My office hours are listed on the syllabus, which you see in front of you. The syllabus you'll also find on our My Courses site. I'm in the office, well, my office is actually outside in the tables outside the political science offices in the third floor of the liberal arts building. And I'm there a limited amount of time, but I'm very available via Zoom, and I'm happy to have Zoom meetings with anybody pretty much between 8 in the morning and 8 at night, depending on my other meetings that I may have. So I don't know if you want to meet though unless you reach out to me. So if you do so, I am more than happy to meet with you. I find state politics to be a really fascinating subject. I worked in state government in Massachusetts for about 10 years before I went to graduate school. Much of my graduate work and professorial research was on state politics and state courts, and I've taught this course many times, both online and in person, and I enjoy the material a whole lot. So feel free to stop by or ask for a Zoom session. I'd be more than happy to discuss the material with you. Okay. You'll find on the syllabus a note on university policies and procedures that are important, and a link to take you to those should you be interested in any of the material about when add drop period ends, what to do if you're challenging a course or a grade. There's a variety of policies and procedures there that will give you information that you need. The course is designed not unlike an American politics course for those of you who have had one of those. We will discuss the basic structures and framework on which state politics work. We will discuss the ways in which citizenry and the public gets involved in state politics through elections, through interest groups, through parties. And we'll discuss the institutions of government, the legislature, the executive, the courts, and the bureaucracy. The difference, of course, is that we're looking at all of these things from the state perspective rather than from the national perspective. And I hope you'll find that they're interesting and fascinating in a variety of ways, and that state and local politics has a much greater influence on our lives than we sometimes expect. Actually, since I anticipate that we will have perhaps even more gridlock on the national level over the next 2 years than we have had in the past, state governments may be the only place where we'll be seeing some interesting policy changes over the years, and will make them particularly interesting places to watch. So that's my plug for paying attention to state politics over the next couple of years. There are a variety of things, as you see the kind of bullet points here, that will, I hope, things you'll walk away understanding and learning as we work together over the next 7 weeks. In addition, there's a whole set of goals that I've always had as someone who taught, that no matter what the subject matter is, that you will learn to think critically, that you'll learn to analyze information, that you'll learn to express yourself, particularly in writing, that you'll learn to assess your own knowledge and position on a variety of policy issues, and determine where you come down on each of these issues. All of those are things that I hope students learn from my classes, regardless of what the subject matter is. In this case, of course, the subject matter is state politics. There are a few things on the syllabus you'll find for creating a healthy learning environment. Some of it has to do with showing respect for each other, particularly when we're engaged in online discussion board conversations, recognizing that there are lots of differences of opinion, many of which are valid. When you have a discussion or disagreement with somebody in this instance, it's probably most important that you remember that your goal should be to explain yourself and not to necessarily convince other people that you are right and they're wrong. This may have a little less applicability in our online asynchronous class than it might in a real-world setting, but I think it's something that's always important to remember. If you have a documented disability, and we need to be aware of that for this class, please let me know that as soon as possible. If there is some way in which our class might interfere with a religious observance for a religion that you may practice that perhaps is not widely recognized at the university, please let me know that so that we can make accommodations for that. Please check your email at least somewhat regularly, perhaps at least daily, because that's the way I will communicate with you. I have provided you with my cell phone number, and I'm happy to receive phone calls, although perhaps I do not want to have texts. But probably the best way to reach me would be by email. I'm fairly good at keeping up with my email, particularly during the week. I'm on my email pretty regularly and will be back in touch with you. If for some reason I don't get back in touch with you within 24 hours, if you're sending an email, you have every right to nag me and send another email reminding me. That should not have to happen, but just in case, okay? And the other thing that's really important to remember, and I think this is particularly important in an online setting, is that you don't want to be cheating. It's really easy to do in a variety of ways with the technology we have available to us today. But number one, that's dishonest, and it's prohibited by the academic policies and procedures of the university as well as of my own class. It also guarantees that you're not going to learn anything, and my guess is that if you're spending some money to be here at UMass, that you'd like to learn something along the way. If you have any concerns at all about whether something might end up being plagiarism or whether it's acceptable in our online format, just ask. And I'm happy to walk you through those steps. Okay. You will see that we have one text for the class. It's Smith and Greenblatt's Governing States and Localities. I've used this text in various editions over the years, and I like its approach. I think it provides solid information. It provides some interesting snippets to help bring that information to life, and it's accessible and readable. We're using the digital version because some of the assignments, as you'll see, will be accessed through the Sage Vantage website. You'll link directly to that website through our My Courses site, but they will be the provider for some of the assignments that you'll be doing for this class. There's also information here in the text as well as on our My Courses site about what you should do should you have any trouble accessing any of the material through the textbook. You can contact me, but they know a whole lot better than I do what is necessary to correct the problems. So if you're emailing them, you can always CC me so that I'm aware you might be having a problem, but you're probably best to be in touch with them sooner rather than later. Especially with the 7-week class, things move really fast, and so you don't want to fall behind for any reason, particularly not a reason of technology or accessing materials, okay? The other thing to bear in mind for accessing the text is that you do get 2 free weeks, so that if you're worried about paying for it up front, you can go ahead and get those 2 free weeks. As long as you pay within that 2-week period, you'll still have access to the textbook, which I think is important for many people. So, course requirements. In general, deadlines matter. There are a lot of materials in here where I've suggested some timelines for doing things, as you'll see in a moment, but they're not necessarily required. Those that are required, though, are required and they matter. And I will penalize you with point deductions for late assignments. Part of that is just to be fair to everybody. If other people have to meet the deadline, it's only fair that you do. Partially it's to keep you on track because the 7 weeks is going to go really fast, and we have effectively 14 weeks worth of material to get through in 7 weeks, and so you don't want to fall behind. If for some reason you're finding a challenge, life interferes sometimes, and I understand that, let me know in advance. We can make arrangements in advance. It's much more difficult to try and correct the error after the fact. So for any reason you're having trouble keeping up, you're finding that you won't be able to make an assignment deadline, be in touch with me and we'll see what we can discuss, okay? The course requirements, the specific assignments. Oh, one other thing about general requirements for class, for assignments. When I've asked you to do a written document, and there are a couple of papers you'll do for this class, as you will see, please, please, please submit it to the My Courses site as a Word document. Do not cut and paste your information into the submission site there. Attach it as a Word document. This enables me to make track changes, to make comments much more easily. I don't want a PDF. I don't want a rich text. I don't want pages. I want a Word document. And as I note on the syllabus, that makes me happier, makes my job easier, and most of us would rather have a grader who's happy than one who is not. So I please encourage you to do that, okay? I'm going to jump over in a moment to our My Courses site so you can see where this material appears on the site, but let me run briefly over the general course expectations, and then I'll take you to the My Courses site so that you'll see how you can access those materials. There are 2 papers that you will do for this class, both about 6 pages in length. This is a 300 level class, so I want to make sure that you're getting as much out of it as you possibly can. The first one is a state project paper where you will choose a state that you will analyze throughout the course of our 7 weeks together. Both this project as well as your policy research paper are more fully described in a very brief video that I posted on our My Courses site. so I won't spend too much time on these. The thing I will say is that the state project paper will be the basis, let me rephrase that. Studying a specific state will be the basis for a variety of assignments in here, including your discussion board site. So it's probably better for you earlier rather than later to choose a state that you want to study. And you can't study either Massachusetts or your home state if you're not from Massachusetts. I'd like you to learn something about the politics and policies of a state other than your own, okay? The policy research paper will be particularly interesting from my perspective because it enables you to do something in studying state politics that is invaluable, and your text will point this out, I think, early in Chapter 1. And that is that states provide you with the opportunity to take a comparative look at the way in which government operates. While there are a lot of similarities between all 50 states, they are also all unique and different entities. And being able to look at those 3 different entities in the course of your policy research paper, you'll be looking at 3 states, enables you to understand more deeply the way in which state politics can operate. So, you will also have a final exam. I know 240 points seems a little weird, but that's the way I could work it out to make my 1,000 point grading scale. It will be open book, open note, because I'm not quite sure how else I could do that in our asynchronous online class. And it will be cumulative, expecting you to both do some comparative work in probably some short answer questions, as well as an essay or 2. I will provide more information on that as the time comes up. The final exam is one of the 2 things in this class that you will not be able to finish in advance. I mean, theoretically, if you really wanted to read a lot and work hard, you could probably get through the class in several weeks. However, the final exam will only be available to you for the last 48 hours of this class. So that's one thing that you won't be able to do until then. The other items here, let me jump ahead to the discussion board and I'll come back to Sage for a moment. I've set up 3 discussion board threads. You will see, I'll show you on our My Courses site. Each one of them kind of focuses on several of the chapters, and I have asked you to do some postings about your own state in regard to some of the subject matters we've discussed. So for instance, during the time which would be in the first thread of discussion that we're discussing state constitutions, you may come across a news source or something else regarding your state. Let's say you chose the state of Missouri and they're doing something interesting or have a constitutional question that's arisen. This would be a really great place to talk about it. I think once you find some sort of a news source to follow about your own state, often the newspaper from your state capital will be a really good source. You will have no difficulty finding material to deepen your understanding of your state. Okay. So let me jump over to the Blackboard's My Courses site. Yours will look somewhat like this. This is not the student version, so yours might look a little bit different. But this is our My Courses site. There's a brief intro to the class, which I encourage you to read, and there's information on my office hours and contact information, as well as the information from the textbook that I noted is also copied here, should you have any trouble accessing things, okay? Now down the left-hand side here, you will find, this is the welcome page, the syllabus and schedule. I'll go over the schedule in a moment. It's just a copy of what I've just been reviewing with you. This video and the other 2 will be posted here in the video link. Here's our discussion board threads. You will see, and to be honest, I think you probably will only see discussion thread number 1 because that will be available to you until February 1st. And it simply asks you to discuss or to post news articles and discuss something that applies to your state that we've discussed through chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 of our text. Okay? You'll see in a moment, and I'll show you, I'll jump down there in a second. For every assignment that I have, there's a fuller description of it on our My Courses site so that you will know exactly both what it is I'm expecting and what the grading criteria are. Okay? Actually, let me jump down to that now and I'll come back to the links. So for instance, assignments, links for submission, assignment descriptions and criteria. For the discussion board, here's the description. You can download the description, what it is I'm looking for, how many postings I expect, kind of what I expect from them in depth, and the specific threads and the dates that they'll be available. Okay. Then we can go down to the policy research paper. You again have the assignment description. There's a copy of the grading rubric I'll use. I think it's always important to know what it is that I'm looking at when I'm grading your papers. I'm sometimes surprised at the number of times students don't pay attention to that. I use that to try and be as fair as possible so that I'm assessing each one of you against the same criteria. So it's important to look at. And last but not least, you'll see that there are 2 steps in the policy paper process. One of them is a really brief paper where it's really intended just to kind of get you started, where you'll describe to me what it is that you're looking at and what states you're going to be analyzing. And then here's where you will submit your final paper. I assume many of you have already used my courses for submitting work, but let me show you what it looks like just in case you haven't. You can look at the rubric again here. It tells you how many points are possible for the assignment. And here's where you will attach a file, please, as a Word document to submit your assignment. Okay, so we'll cancel here because I'm not submitting anything. And move down, you'll find the exact same format for your state project paper, except there's the description, there's the grading criteria. Part of this, when you read the full description, you will find that you have 4 short papers to write throughout the course of our 7 weeks in preparation for your final paper. And by that I mean you will, when we get through chapters 3 and 4, there will be a deadline you will see on our assignment links where you will be expected to, having read those chapters, write a brief paper, a 1 to 2 page summary of how what we've looked at in those chapters might play out in your state. What have you learned about your state in regard to, for instance, chapter 3 will be constitutions, chapter 4 will be finance and budgeting. What have you learned about those facts in your state that might be applicable, or what have you learned about your state that helps to provide some insight into the things you've learned in the chapters on those topics, okay? And what you'll find, I think, are 2 things. Number one, that as you do this, you'll become much more familiar with your state. You'll more easily be able to find articles and links to post on the discussion board, and you will have all the material prepared for you when you do your final paper, which is kind of a summary discussion of your state political system, okay? So it's intended to build so that the last paper is not very onerous. You'll simply be drawing from the work that you have already done largely, okay? Now let me once more jump ahead here. You will find for every one of the chapters that I've assigned, and there are 12 chapters assigned with, that I've expected you to read with some assignments associated with them. There are also 4 other chapters here that I've provided simply as a background for you to begin getting some background on the policies that you might want to choose to do your policy paper on. So for instance, if you're interested in education policy, you can glance through this chapter and find out what kinds of topics are available in regard to state politics and education on crime and punishment. You do not have to read these chapters. They're simply there as resources available to you, okay? Now you have to, or at least I'm highly expecting, that you read these 12 chapters. And within each one, you will find, once you click on one of these for the first time, you will be asked to input the code or to register with the textbook. After that, you will just move seamlessly as we're going to do here. It just moves right to the text. And in a moment, you'll find, I hope, okay, that you can move right through the text section by section. Wonderful picture of a lovely dog. And here's the text itself, right? This is exactly the way it looks in a hard copy, but of course many of you have probably used electronic text already, so this should be nothing new to you, all right? When you look at if this is going to work for me, let's see, let's go back here. Yes, when you look at the list, for instance, for each chapter, it looks overwhelming, but you don't have to click on each one of these. You'll find yourself just naturally moving through them, and the textbook will show you which ones you've already done, okay? Now, the other thing I want to point out here, you will see on the syllabus that several of your assignments are embedded here. So knowledge checks, data activities, and video activities, you will get 1 point for every one of those you complete. It doesn't matter if you get the answer right or wrong, you just have to complete them, okay? I think there are 180, I guess there are 130 altogether, and you'll get a point for each. In part, this is a way to test your knowledge to see whether or not you're actually learning what it was that was presented in the chapter. In part, it's a way for me to see that you're actually doing the reading, or at least moving through the text. Perhaps you won't read it, you'll just click on answers, but I'm hoping that while you're doing that, you will learn something along the way. Double checking your knowledge against what you've read is a really good way to reinforce what it is you've learned. I have to admit, some of the activities I find most beneficial are the data activities. There's one in each chapter, because I find that students don't get much practice in reading data sources, and it's really important way of gathering information. News sources present them a lot, and so you want to be an informed reader, and this will help you to become one of those. At the end of each chapter, there's a quiz. Each quiz is worth 15 points, and that will be graded. It's not timed, but you only get one chance to do it. And obviously, there is no way that I could keep you from using the text, and so it is an open book quiz that you're welcome to use your text in order to complete them. Okay. So let me go back for one last moment to the syllabus itself here. As I pointed out, you have your state project paper and your policy research paper. Again, you'll see the project description much more thoroughly on our My Courses site, and you will also have a short video that I present where I discuss those papers in a little bit more detail should you want more background on that. Your final exam will be with 240 points, which you will also post to My Courses. These two pieces are the ones that I talked about that will be available and accessible through the My Courses site that will link you to the textbook, okay? Your knowledge checks and your chapter quizzes. The discussion board assignment, as I've shown you on the My Courses site, will be available 3 different discussion threads throughout the course of our 7 weeks, okay? And here's my grading scale. It's no different than any other scale that has 0 to 100, except I don't like decimals, so I use the 0 to 1,000, but it's the same breakdown of points, okay? Last but not least, I presented for you a course schedule. Many of these are recommended, not required. Anything that has 3 asterisks like this is a concrete deadline. You need to meet those, okay? So I've tried to point those out for you. I've broken this down by weeks. Clearly, you don't have to follow it. You can do, everything for the first 2 weeks in week 1. You can, except for anything that's got an asterisk, wait until week 2 to do them all. It's totally your choice, but this is to try and guide you through to make this accessible and doable in a 7-week period of time, which is probably my primary concern, to make sure that you can feel that you can stay on top of things, okay? The only things, again, as I said, that you can't do ahead of time will be the discussion board and final exam. Those will have windows of opportunity when they're available, and so you need to participate during those windows of opportunity. For the most part, you will find here that I did not include weekends. So obviously, if you're working on weekends, then that changes the schedule a little bit. And I didn't include our holiday. I assumed that was a day off. So this schedule assumes you're only working Monday through Friday and that you're taking weekends and holidays off. Obviously, you can not do that should that be your choice. And again, you'll see step by step, there's information in here that you need to complete. And when you get to the bottom, you'll find that, lo and behold, you will have completed 14 weeks worth of material down here in 7 weeks. Again, obviously, March 3rd is the last day of our class. So by that period of time, all the Vantage exercises will close. So your quizzes, sorry for the typo, obviously quizzes does not have 2 U's and 2 Z's. Your knowledge checks and your video activities, that will close off. Your state project paper will be due and your final exam will be due. I have your policy paper due the week before so that they're not all cumulative at the end, okay? This is an overview of the class. Again, I'm always a little bit nervous when it's asynchronous and we never get to meet in person. I will try to double check on the My Courses site to make sure that folks are staying up on things. Really, the burden is on you, I'm afraid, to make sure that you get through all this material. I'm hoping that you'll find it interesting and that you will learn a lot along the way, and I strongly encourage you to be in touch with me if you have any questions at all, and if there's any way I can help. I hope you have a good semester.